That's right. All right, everybody. We're now entering the phase of the day where we're going to welcome a power panel to the stage. And this next panel is turning attention into impact. Joining me in welcoming to the stage, Axios Chief Revenue Officer Jacquelyn Target Executive Vice President and Chief Community and Stakeholder Engagement Officer Kiera Fernandez. That's right. Say it again. Say it again. All right. And Huffington Post Executive Editor Kate Palmer, moderated by my teammate and friend Zach Moffatt, CEO and founder of Targeted Victory. Let's go.
All right, give it up, you guys.
Well, thank you. We're going to jump right into this. And what I'd like to do to begin with is introductions, but rather than just read your bios and where you went to college, I'm going to pass it in flavor and just take 30 seconds to give a little context, the job that you're in, kind of the way you kind of approach jobs in context, and then we'll dive right into questions.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Zach, Alexis, the entire Stagwell team for having us today. My name is Jacquelyn. I am the Chief Revenue Officer of Axios. I just celebrated 3.5 years with this organization. As Mike Allen said earlier, this is my second time working with the co-founders. I was with them when they first founded an organization called Politico. And I've dedicated my career to supporting really wonderful storied news brands like Politico, like the New York Times. And I'm very happy to be here having this conversation today.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much to the team, the Stagwell team, Zach, Alexis. My name is Kiera Fernandez, and as mentioned, I lead our community and stakeholder efforts at Target. I've been with Target for almost 25 years. I started right out of college in stores as an executive team leader, and over the course of those next 24 years got incredible opportunities to grow and to build and to learn disciplines and move across the country and have experiences that I would have never imagined in my wildest dreams. And that's why I'm here today, because I don't think I'm an anomaly in that regard. I get to live out what we aspire to do every day, and that's provide growth and opportunity for everyone that we interface with, and I just feel really privileged to be invited here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Palmer. I'm the Executive Editor at HuffPost, and I've been there now for 13 years, so I've been having an amazing time. Thank you so much for having us today and for starting this conversation. It's so important. My background, other than my time at HuffPost, where I spend a lot of time on the intersection of editorial and revenue, is I spend time at storied news brands, including foreign policy and the Onion. So, excited to talk with you.
Well, great, Kate. We're going to jump in with you right away. You know, being with HuffPost for over a decade, walk me through a little bit kind of how it's evolved into this kind of full ecosystem that kind of serves the whole reader. Like when you think about that, what does that mean to you, and kind of like how you think about publication?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've heard a little bit about some of this today. I think it's really important. Now, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary this year. We are spending a lot of time looking at, how we've grown and what we've done to diversify our revenue streams. We now have, we focus on direct sales, but also programmatic and commerce. We've built a thriving business there. And the other thing that we've done is build a really loyal direct audience, because they come to us, they come to our front page, into our our app, because they know that they're going to come to me and they get an unvarnished look at the truth, and they're going to see something that makes them feel immediately that they can connect with what's happening in the news. That's really important to our brand, that they just immediately understand that something important is happening and here's what it is, and it's okay to be entertained by that. We don't have to be afraid of feeling something when we read the news. So we really lean into that. And we know that the people who come to us and who are so loyal, they are the household CEOs, they are conscious consumers, they're people who want to be associated with a brand that is supporting the news that they love.
So no one knows your brand better than you. How do you think about how brands should think about your offering, right? If you're thinking about the way you position for somebody in this room, when you think about it, what is it you want them to take away?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to, and I think even from the beginning of our founding, we have connected data and what's going on with our audience to our stories. And so our reporters and our editors, they are so keyed into what's happening, on our platforms and with our audience. And so they immediately know, because they're looking at that data day in, day out, what is it that's trending? What is it that people care about? What makes them share something? What makes them feel something? And so for us, we look at that data and we look at something that might be kind of an interesting spike. So like, for example, earlier this year we had an interesting spike where we were seeing some stories around sports and culture. We're seeing that kind of trend happening, and we noticed that our readers and our audience was a little bit more interested in stories about the NBA, the WNBA, than maybe even stories they used to care about with the NBA. So we said, there's something here. And we partnered with Eli Lilly and created a sponsorship around sports and culture. And that's turning into a bigger opportunity for next year because it was so successful. So those are the kind of things where, I think it's the data and being driven by that and not being afraid of the thing that is driving the audience's, their interests and their likes and dislikes, and we follow that really closely.
Thank you. So Jacquelyn, I think the beauty of Axios is always kind of this clarity of vision, right? It's how it approaches problems, it's smart brevity, it's created a culture and a nomenclature that people just kind of instinctively understand. But I think it's also kind of connected to, it has clarity of vision on its audiences, and you're really into that. So will you take us through that kind of approach, how Axios thinks about audience, how it thinks about the clarity and what drives it?
Sure, and for those of you who don't know me, clarity of vision is one of my favorite phrases. So it's very poetic. It's also essentially our business model at Axios. When the founders founded us 9 years ago, they had a very clear and simple theory of the case. And it's got to be clear and simple because complexity stymies every company, complexity stymies publishers, brands. So we wanted to make sure that it was very clear and simple. And that was a question of how can you take deeply sourced subject matter expertise written by experts, individuals who truly understand that particular beat. And we really focus on the intersection of policy and tech, media and business. So how do we take that content, present it in a way that is truly clinical, write like a doctor, our co-founder said earlier today. So we want to make sure that we're writing like a doctor there. How do we take that, pair it with very clearly defined audience profiles, and Axios delivers 5, and then distribute that content in a way that develops a one-to-one relationship between Axios and that audience. And that one-to-one connection point was important 9 years ago, it's important today, and we believe that it's going to be even more important moving forward as the LLMs redefine the new digital world order. And so when I think about, when it comes to the content, what makes it distinct in the marketplace is that ultimately it is clinical. Zach, you know this, we don't have opinion section at Axios, we've never hired opinion reporters. We don't even have an editorial board. And in today's landscape, everybody has an opinion about everything. The world is awash in opinion. On any of the platforms, you're finding everybody's opinion about all things all the time. So what makes us distinct is to remove it completely from our calculus. And what remains is clinical news coverage. Here are the facts. You feel about it how you'd like to feel about it. And ultimately, what that means is that we are very distinct in the marketplace. Audiences receive us differently, and also we end up having very interesting conversations with our brand partners because of that. When it comes to those audience profiles, I mentioned there are 5, and a few folks who are in this room who have ever been in meetings with me can attest that sometimes if I do not hear a client say one of our audiences is their target, I will 100% make a reference to some of the great publishers that have been represented on this stage today, because we are hotly focused on 5 profiles. The first is capital I influencer. So that is policymakers, national and statewide. Those are the individuals who are writing policy, voting on policy, and signing on policy. The second audience profile is the corporate C-suite and C-suite -1, especially within the Fortune 100. The third profile are your deal makers, so investors, private equity, venture capitalists, and this is one of the reasons why we've had such a vibrant IR division at Axios. The fourth audience that we focus on is media and communicators. So imagine the CEOs of media entities, other journalists who are going to help that brand story continue. Imagine CMOs as well as CCOs, and I would think that everybody in this room can attest to the fact that the Chief Communication Officer's role has become more influential over the past 5 years, especially as brands think about how to position their company, both internally and externally, that improves their business. The fifth profile is local smart professionals across our local ecosystem, which as of today we have 34 local markets that we've launched.
Kiera, we have on this side publishers, they sit on one side of the equation. Obviously, you sit on the other side of the equation, right? You're the person who's thinking about solving something quite different. And ultimately, you're using the power of connection to drive local stories, local impact. And these are places that these stories will have. But how do you actually think about kind of pulling together those stories and what to share within the work you're doing, and also how you leverage these platforms?
No, thank you for that question. And it actually threads the needle in what the two just talked about. And I would even say the previous panel, zigzagging through what you think the consumer wants and taking big bets on what that is. And then really understanding that there is no AI replacement for proximity human-to-human. There's not a replacement for that. So when my team and I think about the power of community, we have 2,000 target stores and distribution centers across all 50 states, 400,000 plus team members. We have influencers in every building that we're in, and they're interfacing with the public. And when you think about the connection of what's happening across the country, the people that are experiencing that on the front line every single day, that's news. That's storytelling. That is, Dr. Jacobs mentioned earlier, the local should punch up the national, not the national pushing down to the local. And we see that every single day. Stories of heroism, stories of resilience, I'm a byproduct of that, right? This wasn't how I envisioned my career, and I've been able to build experiences that I had never imagined for myself that started locally, that local impact running a store, working in the community, being a part of the national campaigns that always have a local affiliate and a local chapter. Builds your requisite knowledge of life beyond where you are today, and also an appreciation for what happens every single day. It's in those hyper-local moments. Everyone in here lives in a community in some capacity. That's where we are most humanized. We're most humanized by what's happening with our neighbor, what's happening in the school, what's happening in the place of worship, what's happening on the block that we reside in. So when we're able to carve out and tell those local stories of impact with a national or our local partner that is about food and education and job skill development and workforce and the way that we're giving back, that matters to people and it builds trust. And when you can cultivate and build that local trust, they'll give you more grace when you're trying to shuffle through the national stories that have inaccuracies in them. So what I would really love to leave with everyone in this space is a lot of conversation I've heard already today about the importance of accuracy, fact-driven insights. As a badge of honor, I went to journalism school as an undergraduate student. I have a heavy reverence for the role that the press plays in bringing information to us that we can rely on and we can find trusted. And we can build that locally. But it's not binary. We have to be working in partnership with one another to help bring expressions of community, national news, partnerships, things to focus on to the masses. And it's a ripe opportunity to do so right now.
I would add, and I think what Kiera is also scratching at is that it's no longer about reaching audiences, it's about earning them. And earning them is all about, you first have to earn their attention, you have to earn their trust, you want to earn their business, and ultimately you want to earn their loyalty. And I think that what you're talking about is truly where the marketplace is going. We've graduated beyond reaching these audiences anymore. It's very much about earning that trust.
It is, and the disruption is not going to be less disruptive. The disruption is going to be more pronounced, more relevant. The expectations are going to increase. And our way of finding our path to, what's the word I'm looking for? Finding our path to resolute like discourse, where we can have different opinions and it doesn't turn into a viral moment, where you only do that in proximity. Proximity, propensity are what will bring us back to the important things that we want to solve together, agnostic of where you sit in your personal opinions or your personal affiliations. What I believe we all want is everybody wants to find their source of happiness wherever they are. And we don't have to aspire to that. That's actually achievable, and that's what we can do in partnership together.
So building on that, and when you really say trust, because trust is so important, it's a building block, right? But then how does that work for a brand like yours when you level it up? I mean, everyone gets 5 hours and that becomes 1 million hours. And like, talk us through a little bit of what it's like, because Target does so much, and yet it probably sometimes gets lost in how you work on that to ensure it is, and then where you push it out, right? Local publications and things like that. How does that process work for you?
Well, I don't have to tell anyone in this room that you need to have that in the forefront of people's minds when you're going through bouts of misinformation and inaccuracy. It gets very difficult to outpunch social media in a moment when you haven't already been very clearly establishing for a period of time what you do more transparently with press, with media, and you have to earn that differently today than you did 25 years ago. So for us, no misstep should ever be anything other than a lesson to learn how to recalibrate and reload and like reinvent yourself in terms of what you do and what matters to you. And for us, there is nothing more important. Our whole company was built on the premise of community. The Dayton family did $1 million investment in community 100 years ago. It game changed the entire industry. No one had ever done anything like that before because they believed in the moral uplift of humanity. That is what they call it. $1 million for the moral uplift of humanity. And anyone who works with us, it's just part of your fast brain training, like, oh, we volunteer. That's what we do. Part of my job is I volunteer in my local community, and I have a responsibility for the reciprocity that creates space for everyone to belong and for everyone to have a chance to grow and develop. We have not told that story well because for us, that is just so deeply ingrained in our ethos. It's not bragging to talk about how important it is to be invested in community. It's actually, a primary factor of how you build brand love and loyalty, and that is a disruptive change that we're all going to have to answer to, no matter what's going on, no matter what's happening. Like, go ahead and stand in your power. We care about people every single day. Every moment of their lives, we care. So we just need to shout that from the rooftops. So then when you have misinformation, people have something else to stand on than what they saw on Instagram.
And Kate, you kind of, you think about the value of news and culture coming together for brands, but I feel like you guys do a really strong job of taking these moments that break through and harnessing them and having a long tail kind of component to it. So walk us through a little bit how you think about that. Things often start quite locally and op-eds and then build it out.
Yeah, I was thinking a a lot about what you said about community and how that's the thing that if you can really get people to connect with what's happening in their community and to your brand, that can be such a strengthener for you. And in this moment of, so much sameness that's out there, and AI, and all these, ways that feel almost like existential for media brands to try to figure out. One of the things we realized is even beyond our news coverage, is some of the stories we do about personal, first-person stories that get at the heart of what it means to be human, what it means to be a person in a community, or as a teacher, or a mom. Those are the stories that actually resonate the most for us oftentimes, and they go the most viral, to your question. And if you'll permit me, I just have one story that it's so amazing. So we ran a personal story a few months back about a man who heard about the concept of school lunch debt in his home state of Utah. So he heard there was something like $2.8 million in school lunch debt, and these are kids who go to school and they're not low income enough to qualify for aid, but they're suffering because they don't have funds to eat their lunch at school. So he heard about this and he thought, this is so tragic, that we just, as adults, we're okay with just kind of standing around and saying, no, you can't eat, or you're going to have alternative sandwiches tonight. So he called up his local school board, first to fact check that fact, and to see the real. And then second, he said, could I just pay off the debt of my local elementary school? He didn't have any connection with it. He paid it off with $835. So he paid it. Just did that. And then he wrote an essay about it for us, a personal essay. And that's the kind of thing that where I think we can make, we have a real difference, a differentiator for us as a publisher, because we do that, I think, pretty well. And so he wrote this story. It went bonkers viral. That's a technical term. Okay, it went bonkers viral, and then what happened next was actually the really special part. Other people, our readers, read it, and then they decided to do the same thing. And so you had tens of thousands of dollars that went out into the communities, and that he heard about, and he wrote again about it. And so there was a second essay. I encourage you to go read it. Happy to give anybody who likes to read. And he wrote about it again, and so just to see that kind of connection with our audience, to see that it mattered to them enough to read about this. First of all, to have somebody who would write about it, but then to read about it, to believe it, to then act, to then say, oh my God, I don't just have to throw my hands up in the air and feel despair over everything I'm reading in the news, even on our front page. It's so important that we can connect people with that feeling of, and try to get past the idea of just feeling hopeless. Because it shouldn't be like that, right? We all have agency, we're all in a wonderful country, and we need to act when we can. So if we can help people feel that and then act it, and then hopefully connect it with all of your brands and find ways to actually, act in our communities, that's kind of what we get to the heart of at HuffPost and Hype.
So if I could just climb onto and co-sign on that story, as I know who the audience is in here. There's nothing more inspirational. There's nothing that will give you a greater sense of gratitude. There's nothing that will help you cut through the negativity that unfortunately we get bombarded with more than the optimism that we can all find joy and hope in. Then those local moments, again, nobody can keep me down for long, because if I need a dose of joy, I just walk into a store and I go spend some time with our team, and inevitably there are a dozen things that have happened in any store, in any of our 2,000 across the country. That was a moment of joy, delight, positivity, and grace for someone who came in, or someone who was in community, or someone who needed support, or some organization that the team was doing that day. And I think there is an enormous opportunity, and I would dare say a responsibility, for us to collectively start to shine a light on the local good. The people that bring it to pass every day. The people that live it every day. Not everyone wants to be an influencer, and those that do, I applaud that they're finding ways to bring untapped disruption to the industry that's going to make the industry thrive. And we don't have to make zero-sum choices. We can bring more people to the table and start to highlight those folks that are just living life every day, bringing joy to people every day, making an impact by, I'm just gonna go buy off the school debt, school lunch debt, because I can. Like, I remember being a kid, I'm an educator's kid, and seeing people get a school lunch ticket that had a different color. Anybody else remember that? Like, we shouldn't have our kids feeling that way, and we have the opportunity to empower them differently.
When it comes to this conversation about local, it is one of the reasons why we expanded our footprint over the past 2 years across local. We're in 34 markets today. And one of the things that aligns all of us on the stage is that what we've identified works is whole person news coverage at the local level. So it is not just about what's happening in the mayor's office or the economic impact or stories coming out of the small businesses or the headquarters in any particular community, like in Twin Cities where Target is. Ultimately, it is about also what are those good, feel-good stories about individuals who are having an outsized impact on their communities. Where should you go this weekend to have dinner? It's that whole person that ultimately resonates, and it's a great place for brands to place messaging that are personalized to those local communities so that they may build either, and it depends upon how you think about the world, but you're looking to build a brand halo or brand armor in the case that ultimately you're facing a national challenge. That absolutely can be built at that local level.
Well, I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. Please, thank you.